I love interpretive art. I mean, seriously, there's something about the ability to just take a look at something with zero guidance and just appreciate it. You can soak in it, give it your own meaning, and while it may look appealing to the eye, the real appeal comes from what you make of it, and that is the most romanticised part of it all for me. It's just so magical. And while, of course, to the original artist, the art in question will always have a real meaning, the choice for that artist to put aside their vision in order for the consumers to attach their own reality to a piece is a sacrifice I will always have a pretty large amount of respect for. On that note, gaming. Sorry, I should have been a little bit more creative with that segue, but gaming isn't free from the aspect of interpretation. Really, no form of fictional media is. Film, TV, books, and anime, and even manga, they are all subject to the aspect of interpretation if their creator feels the need or wants to have that be a gear in the machine of their work. However, when it comes to these types of media, we'll just use gaming as an example for now. There's mainly two ways a studio can do this. Method 1 is a choice to give the player little to no information, dropping them in a world and giving them straightforward goals to allow their mind to piece together what the story is, giving the player a rather mysterious sense of freedom. And Method 2 being the decision to have the player given a lore dump at the beginning of the game, and have bits of lore and information scattered through the game for the player to discover if they so choose. From Software's Soulsborne Ring Dies Twice franchise being a prime example of the latter, and even Mojang's Minecraft being a good example of the former. Of course, there are many games that fit into either category very well, but there's one game that kind of feels a bit alienated when you place it in either category, and I think that's where most of its appeal comes from in terms of a narrative perspective. That game being Team Ico's Shadow of the Colossus. Shadow of the Colossus is the second game in development studio Team Ico's trilogy. The trilogy consisting of PlayStation 2's Ico, PlayStation 2's Shadow of the Colossus, and PlayStation 4's The Last Guardian. All three games are absolutely gorgeous in their own right, not only when it comes down to storytelling, but just almost any other aspect really. I mean, with we'll say controversial controls aside. You know, I ever thought it'd be a good idea for like the Y button to be the jump button for this game should just be sectioned. Oh my god, I'm gonna fucking kill myself! The games tend to go on to receive critical acclaim, and if you were to pick up the controller and give one of them a go, I think you'll find it pretty easy to see why that is. However, when it comes to Shadow of the Colossus, there's something different here. Something mysterious. The game released 2 years shy of a decennial ago now, which is an extremely long time for video game standards. Apologies to any of my viewers that may take offence to that. Beauty always comes with age in my eyes. So, what makes this game so magnetising to an audience, to a player base even? Well, this is where the point of it neither fitting into either category of interpretive art and gaming comes in. Its narrative is basic, the game and the direction it leads the player in is basic, albeit extremely fun and gorgeous. The controls are, again, basic, and yet after almost 20 years, things are still being discovered. Strange carvings are being found. Secret items were uncovered constantly. Story elements were being piled on. A whole marketing campaign that flew under the radar was being found and revealed piece by piece. There's a mystery looming in the forbidden lands of this game's story. It takes both ideas of presenting an interpretive story for a player, but somehow, after 2 decades, it just evolves. Now, for those that maybe haven't played Shadow of the Colossus or needs a refresher on the game's story, it follows a boy named Wander and his seemingly trusty steed Agro. The game starts with them rushing through gorgeous forests, unforgiving cliffsides and violent rain. They seem to be carrying a large object wrapped in cloth, and as they reach their destination and cross what can only be described as a beautifully intimidating bridge into a large castle or temple, the object is revealed to be the lifeless body of a girl named Mono. Wander having taken her body to the Temple of the Forbidden Lands with the goal to restore life to the poor young girl. A voice calling out to him in the temple, telling him to defeat 16 colossi in order to have a wish granted. The voice almost appearing to be bragging to the player that it can restore her life if the boy so wishes, and then it is up to you, the viewer, the player, to smite down these 16 terrifying colossi in order to save the girl you so determinedly travelled with on your loyal horse, your best friend. I want you to picture this. You're young, you just got home from school. You've got no friends, no romantic interest. I mean, if you saw what I looked like, it wouldn't take Sherlock Holmes to figure that part out. But you boot up the PS2 and you play the brand new game you received from your loving parent or carer. That game is Shadow of the Colossus, and as you're playing the game, you're enthralled by what it has to offer. For the games of its time, it feels so open, it feels so grand. The music captivates you, it almost intimidates you, and it motivates you, most importantly. Each colossi making you feel like a king every time you take one down, and at the end of the day, it's the good old formula of saving the girl that's been the staple in storytelling since before you were doing the competitive 1500 meter swim in your dad's sack. Back then, you thought that's all it was. You were just there to save the girl. You, Wander, and Aggro, a three-piece team fighting desperately to save Mono. Is she your best friend, your sister, possibly a lover, or maybe even a princess? Who knows? At the time, you don't question a damn thing because what is important is that you're having a blast. That's the thing though. You're not questioning a single thing. Don't worry, I'm not holding you accountable for that. I think everyone did the exact same thing on their first couple of playthroughs. After a while though, people started to theorise, to pull back the curtain, I suppose you could say. Shadow of the Colossus is a true masterstroke in alienation, not immersion. This is the heading of an NME article I stumbled upon after my most recent playthrough of the game, and that title, that message, right before I even began reading the first sentence, it hit me like a truck. I'll leave Jack Richardson's very short but lovingly sweet article in the description so you can take an entire read through of it yourself, but the one entry here that captivated just how this game makes you feel as a player was right here.
What makes Shadow of the Colossus such a masterpiece? Well, I only truly understand after I had found myself back on the couch.
Richardson proceeds to write,
This huge, empty world gives us space to think. Finding the next Colossus is usually pretty trivial, but those 10 or so minutes with nothing but the sound of our horses' hooves for company pushes us to think about what we're doing and why.
Pushes us to think about what we're doing and why. This is Fumito Ueda. Hello. Fumito Ueda is the director behind Shadow of the Colossus and, well, really likes to do interviews. Aside from a few pretty interesting details about the development of his games, sup Jeff, he usually says very little about theme or meaning. However, I did stumble upon something he did say about Shadow of the Colossus, and that it's his take on cruelty. Now, that really got the gears in my brain turning. Going back to Jack Richardson's point of feeling alienated while playing the game, the story, it doesn't welcome the player. I don't mean this in a way to which it turns you off from playing the game or makes you dislike it. No, I mean, as Wander with Aggro accompanying you, things feel unsettling. Right from the jump, this isn't a game where you feel like you're a macho man hero or that this is the story of an underdog that lights the fire in your heart. No, you don't belong in the land you've travelled to. Each move you make, each colossi you defeat, shrine you worship, you feel, to be honest, you feel very weird doing it until the very end of the game. This is a very eerie, unforgiving experience for a player. Every time I play this game, no matter what length of time lays between playthroughs, I always feel intimidated. Like I'm being watched or like I'm doing something wrong as I progress when I defeat a colossi. While people who have never played the game and are watching this video may draw comparisons to, say, The Legend of Zelda, in which you play as Link, a character that Wander obviously gives off a similar vibe to, where your goal a lot of the time is to save Princess Zelda, in this case, the position being filled by Mono. This game does a good job just by the atmosphere it provides that this isn't the case. You're not the hero you think you are. The player doesn't even know if Mono deserves to be saved or not, regardless of what your morals may be. You are an intruder to these lands. You're disrupting the peace for your own selfish goals and wants, and that is what feels cruel. That is what alienates the player. You're not feeling the cruelty, not for a majority of the game at least. No, you are the cruelty. You're not the good guy in this tale by any manner of means, whether you may be playing as a boy that thinks he's doing the right thing, or whether you may be playing as a boy purely driven by his own selfish wants. We don't really know which is which for sure. There is no narrative direction here to suggest that you are the selfless hero risking it all to save the girl you love, or your dearest sister, or the princess, or whatever Mono may be to you.
Such tension would be impossible to generate if we fully understood what was going on. The game feels profoundly lonely and uneasy. Not just because of its dark minimum art style, but because we can't really empathize with or understand what we're doing in it. As the player, we're isolated from the world that we're supposed to inhabit.
Again, a quote from Jack Richardson's analysis article on the game, one that speaks volumes. Not just for an analysis piece, but well, I think it perfectly encapsulates what us, players, feel in the game perfectly. Shadow of the Colossus is not about the rather obvious themes of opposites and parallels, but one of loneliness and the feeling of uncertainty with every move you make. This is a feeling to me that is rather unique in gaming, to be honest. Of course, there are many similar cases such as the Souls series and Elden Ring, where you're thrown into a land where you're clearly not welcome in, but in those games it's emphasised from the jump that you are not the average hero. If you so choose, you are not the textbook good guy protagonist, Miyazaki himself even stating that playing Ueda's first work, Aiko, inspired him to quit his job at the Oracle, an American tech firm, and inspired him to pursue game design. He joined From Software, of which he is now the president of the company. Shadow of the Colossus is very unique to me in a sense that it doesn't emphasise this at all. It sets the player's brain on a track that makes you believe what you're doing is right, but even after the defeat of Valis, the name given to the first Colossus by the fanbase, things just don't feel right. Sure, you feel pretty fucking good about yourself for taking down such a hulking brute of a creature, but there isn't any big payoff. You're not rewarded with anything. Aside from an increase in stamina, you don't gain anything either, story-wise or anything like that. You're just impaled by a dark energy that's imprisoned by Valis, and you're sent right back to the beginning. In that moment, right from the jump, it becomes pretty clear that there's something bigger than Wander and Aggro and Mono, something you're not supposed to understand. Secrecy being an extremely strong theme throughout the game, as well as Ueda's work process as a whole. He's a rather tight-lipped man, and even when he delivers to us whatever projects he's working on at the time, they're still riddled with mystery and a lack of understanding as we go forward. I do think that Aiko and The Last Guardian are probably the most narratively direct games in the trilogy, leaving Shadow of the Colossus and the player who chooses to pick up the controller in the dark, and I wouldn't have that any other way. This game always kind of somehow just finds a way to wriggle its way back into my life, really, because I'm gonna be honest, I did start making this video a long time ago, and I didn't really think I was gonna finish it. I thought that I was just gonna abandon this project like most of the other ones that I've started doing, but I don't know, there's something about this one that it just brought me back in. I don't really know if it was the urge to just kind of make a YouTube video or if it was just because I like the game so much, but I always just find myself going back to the game somehow, somewhere or another. I think that the most interesting part to me is the idea of manipulation in the game. I didn't really talk about it much in the game, but I think that that being manipulated by Dormien, the main villain, or the closing villain, I suppose you could say, to kill these innocent creatures that you don't really know if they even existed prior to Dormien being closed off in them. It does make you feel guilty, and you feel cruel doing it, and that's where my point kind of stands, is I don't think you're supposed to feel good about what you do in this game. You're supposed to feel bad and feel like evil for doing what you're doing, I guess, and there is a sense of selfishness that comes from playing as Wander throughout this game. You're not really told what you're doing is correct, or you're not really told by anyone else other than Dormien's voice that what you're doing is the right thing to do. So you're purely acting based on a selfish want. But I don't know, I just think that part of it is really interesting to me, and with what Ueda said about the game being his depiction of cruelty and a cruel action or a cruel existence, it does it pretty well when it comes to that. But yeah, that's all I really wanted to say. Closing thoughts, I'll probably do these with every video I make, because I feel like it's just like a little ribbon to put on the neatly packaged box. But yeah, thanks for watching. I'll see you in the next one.